Welcome back, gang. In this tutorial, I'll improve a sentence to make the subjects and verbs correspond to the logical characters and actions. The lesson is meant to accompany chapters 3 and 4 of Style by Joseph Williams and Joseph Bishop. You'll be able to listen to my thoughts as I step through my writing process. I think that's more useful than simply comparing the original version of a sentence to an improved version. As always, feel free to pause the video at any time to collect your thoughts or take notes. Start by evaluating the sentence on the left side of your window. You should see at least two kinds of problems that Williams and Bishop have warned us about. Are you ready? First, I notice two nominalizations, agreement and renewal. I also see the noun necessity, which strongly resembles a nominalization. Remember that a nominalization is a noun being used to describe an action. Typically, the noun and its corresponding verb share a common origin. Whenever I see that I've written one of these, I ask myself if the idea would be better expressed as a verb. In this case, the verb forms might be agree, need, and renew. The question naturally leads me to ask who or what in this sentence agrees, needs, or renews something. The answer will be my character. Second, I notice the phrase, there was. Ideally, the verb of a clause will communicate a lot of information. The only true verb in this sentence is was, which is probably the least informative verb in the English language. Phrases like there was and it is exist because they do serve a purpose, but English speakers tend to get lazy and use them where another verb might provide more information. The habit is especially common in speech, but it carries over into writing. So as we improve this sentence, I'm going to target the words I've marked in red. The changes I make will lead to other changes. I expect that. I'll address the beginning of the sentence first. I'll cross out the first four words. The only idea here worth saving is agreement, but I think that might work better as a verb, so I'll jot down agree. Now I have to ask who or what is agreeing. If I'm lucky, the sentence will give me a hint, and it does. The countries agree about something. So let's make the countries the subject of the clause and agree the verb of the clause. I remember that the original sentence is set in the past, so I change the verb tense from agree to agreed. Agree is typically followed by one of two words. The first is to. The second is that. Let's write a version that uses to. What I really mean in this case is that agree is followed by the infinitive form of another verb. Agree is an example of a catenating verb, verbs that can be followed by infinitives or gerund. Here are some other examples. I'm sure they're familiar. When I ask what the countries are agreeing to do, I see the verb renew. Necessity is a special idea, and we'll deal with that in a moment. So I'll cross out this renewal stuff and make a note that I want to renew something. In real life, you'll make these changes so fast that you might not bother with notes. I'm giving you a visual representation of what's in my head. Now I'll transfer that verb to complete the infinitive that I started when I wrote the word to. A funny thing about language is that when you make one choice, it can only be followed by a limited number of other choices. In this case, the word renew leads me directly to an object, the treaty. Any way of expressing the necessity idea after the word to is going to require a lot of words and some weird grammar, so I'll just cross out all of that. Which leaves me with the treaty. Let's put it all together. The countries agreed to renew the treaty. This is a very direct way of expressing the original idea. We've eliminated the useless there was construction and added a more informative verb. The phrase to renew is not exactly a verb, but it sounds more verb-like than renewal, which is a noun. And for this sentence, that's an improvement. As a consequence, the sentence is more concise. That was not the original goal, but it's an excellent bonus. You might be worried that I removed the necessity idea, and that's good. You should think carefully about removing any piece of information. But let's be clear about what we're not doing. We're not practicing the skill of completing textbook exercises. We're not trying to make assumptions about the original author's intent. Instead, we're learning strategies for improving our own sentences. And that means that you'll have to ask yourself if the necessity idea is important. The context will help you decide. Which leads me to the second way of improving the sentence, the version where agreed is followed by that. I mentioned before that agree can be used as a catenating verb. It can also be used as a reporting verb. Reporting verbs are typically followed by noun clauses beginning with the word that. I'm sure the examples on your screen right now look familiar. So I'll rewind my improvement to the point where I can insert the word that. Because we're introducing a clause, I'll add a grammatical subject. We're still discussing the countries, so I'll use the pronoun they. A clause needs a verb, so I'll use renew. And since the goal of this improvement is to keep the necessity idea, I'll scratch out all of these words again, but I'll jot down necessity to keep it in mind. As before, renew needs an object, so let's finish the clause with the treaty. Now I'll use a trick that often comes in handy, and that's to transform the necessity idea into a modal verb. Remember that a modal is a kind of auxiliary verb that we place before a main verb to indicate ideas like ability or permission. So I'll open a space here where the modal will go. The obvious choices to indicate necessity are must and should. In this case, I think should sounds the most natural. I'll leave it up to you to figure out why. Let's clean up the mess. The countries agreed that they should renew the treaty. Again, the result is a more concise version of the original. Concision is frequently a consequence of transforming nouns into verbs. Let's look at the first version I wrote. One of them is not better than the other in any absolute sense. Their meanings are close, but not the same. Each one is better suited to a particular context. Okay, we've looked at some strategies for making sure your grammatical subjects and verbs describe the most logical characters and actions. If you get in the habit of improving all of your sentences this way, your writing will be easier to understand in general. Notice that I keep referring to improvements. No one expects you to write excellent sentences off the top of your head. Follow your intuition when you write a first draft. Just be sure to leave enough time to edit your prose. That's it. Thanks for watching. Say what you mean.